8 years, that's all it took. From a president's promise to boot prints on the moon with computers weaker than what's in your pocket right now. 50 years of progress later, going back has taken more than 20 years. Apollo sprinted to the lunar surface in 1 decade. Artemis is still running after 2 decades. And the reason has nothing to do with capability, and everything to do with what happened in between. In May 1961, John F. Kennedy stood before Congress and drew a line in the sand. Land a man on the moon, and return him safely before the decade was out. That single sentence set off a national mobilization unlike anything before or since. Within months, NASA's budget shot upward. $5.3 billion in 1965 alone, more than 5 times its level just 3 years earlier. Factories sprang up across the country, and the agency's workforce quadrupled, all to meet an unyielding deadline. Every decision, every dollar, every late-night calculation served that singular purpose. The Saturn V rocket went from blueprint to roaring launch pad in just 6 years. The command module and the lunar module were designed, built, and tested at a pace that left little room for caution. There was no backup plan, no second chance. The world was watching, and the Soviets were already ahead. But racing the clock came at a price. On January 27, 1967, a fire swept through the Apollo 1 command module during a routine test, claiming the lives of Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee. The loss was devastating. Engineers tore apart the design, rebuilt the hatch, rewired the systems, and pressed on. The goal never changed, even as the risk became painfully real. 8 years after Kennedy's challenge, Apollo 11 touched down in the Sea of Tranquility. 2 men stepped onto the lunar surface, watched by 500 million people on Earth. It was the fastest leap in technological history, driven by political will, a tidal wave of funding, and a willingness to accept dangers that would be unthinkable today. The 21st century timeline to return to the moon reads like a story stuck in slow motion. In 2004, President George W. Bush announced the Constellation program, promising Americans a new era of lunar exploration. The plan called for astronauts on the moon by 2020. Factories dusted off old blueprints, engineers started work on new rockets, and NASA's public messaging swelled with talk of a coming lunar renaissance. But behind the scenes, the energy that once fueled Apollo was missing. Funding arrived in cautious increments, never matching the urgency of the 1960s. Each year brought new reviews, shifting priorities, and a growing sense that the finish line kept moving further away. By 2010, Constellation was canceled. The official reason was cost overruns and a lack of clear progress, but the deeper story was institutional drift, a system slowed by political turnover, budget ceilings, and the absence of a single unifying deadline. NASA kept the Orion capsule alive, but the vision fractured. The Space Launch System was born out of compromise, stitched together from existing parts and political mandates, rather than a clean slate design. Artemis, the program that eventually emerged, inherited this legacy, a patchwork of initiatives, each with its own timeline and set of hurdles. For the public, the years ticked by with little to show. Announcements came and went, each promising a new date for humanity's return to the moon. Yet the sense of momentum that defined Apollo was gone. Instead, the lunar program became a symbol of modern stagnation, a reminder that, in the absence of clear urgency, even the grandest ambitions can be mired in delay. The memory of Apollo 1's fire never faded from NASA's walls, but the tragedies of Challenger in 1986 and Columbia in 2003 forced a reckoning that would change human spaceflight forever. Challenger's loss, 7 lives in a bright Florida sky, was traced to a failed O-ring and a chain of ignored warnings. The Rogers Commission's investigation did not just point to technical flaws, it exposed a culture where schedule and image sometimes outranked caution. Recommendations from the board led to the first independent technical assessments, formalized launch commit criteria, and a new requirement. No shuttle could fly without passing through a series of rigorous, documented safety gates. 17 years later, Columbia's breakup on re-entry brought grief and anger back to the forefront. This time, the Columbia Accident Investigation Board demanded even deeper safety reforms. NASA created the Office of Safety and Mission Assurance, giving safety officials direct authority over mission managers. Every crewed mission now faced an expanded gauntlet of reviews, from design certification to in-orbit safety checks. The agency adopted independent verification and validation, IV&V, for all flight software, separating coders from testers to catch subtle errors before they became fatal. For Artemis, these hard-won lessons are built into the bones of the program. Before any astronaut steps aboard Orion, the spacecraft must clear a multi-gate certification process, with each subsystem scrutinized by panels that answer to no single project lead. The Aerospace Safety Advisory Panel, born in the aftermath of Challenger, holds veto power if risks remain unresolved. Delays are not just tolerated, they are expected, even required, when uncertainty lingers. The result is a culture where every step forward is measured and deliberate, trading speed for the assurance that no lesson from the past will be forgotten. Artemis is not a single rocket or a lone spacecraft. It is a sprawling network of hardware, contracts, and timelines, each one threading through a web of partners and priorities. At the heart of this network stands the Space Launch System, a heavy-lift rocket built by Boeing using engines first fired in the shuttle era. Its launch schedule is the backbone, but it is only the beginning. The Orion crew capsule, developed over 2 decades and now carrying a $16 billion price tag, must be ready to fly atop SLS, its software and safety systems certified through layer after layer of independent review. But Artemis does not end there. The Human Landing System, split between SpaceX Starship and Blue Origin, Blue Moon, operates on its own development clock, with milestones and test flights set by commercial contracts. Each company brings its own engineering teams, supply chains, and risk calculations. A delay in Starship lunar refueling demonstration, or a hiccup in Blue Origin propulsion tests, ripples outward and forces NASA to reshuffle launch dates and mission sequences. The Lunar Gateway, a mini space station built in partnership with the European, Japanese, and Canadian space agencies, adds another layer. Its power modules, docking ports, and robotics are built on 3 continents, each with separate funding votes and review boards. Even the XEMU spacesuits, critical for walking on the moon, are under contract to private firms, with their own delivery deadlines and design hurdles. Every interface is a potential bottleneck. There are 7 major handoffs: Orion to Gateway, Gateway to Lander, Lander to Surface, and so on. Each requires months of integration testing, software validation, and legal review. If any piece falls behind, the entire mission waits. Where Apollo's schedule was a straight line, Artemis is a web, every strand adding both resilience and risk. The drive for sustainability means more partners, more moving parts, and a timeline shaped as much by negotiation as by engineering. Congress now holds the purse strings tighter than ever. Each year, Artemis funding arrives in measured doses, debated and approved through a maze of committees and fiscal reviews. Where Apollo's budget once soared to more than 4% of federal spending, Artemis must make do with less than 1%, about $30 billion projected through 2028. The money comes in annual installments, not in a surge, and each new administration brings the risk of shifting priorities or outright cancellation. NASA leaders must plan for a future that could stretch across a decade and span multiple presidencies, never certain how much support will survive the next election. This incremental approach slows hiring, delays contracts, and forces projects to pause between funding cycles. The result is a program designed to endure political wins, but at the cost of calendar years lost to waiting, just to keep the lights on and the work moving forward. In the end, it is a contest between two visions of progress. Apollo ran like a sprinter, focused, explosive, and willing to accept injuries for the sake of the finish line. Artemis moves at a marathoner's pace, every stride measured, every risk weighed, knowing the path is longer and the destination more ambitious. The world that built Apollo chased a single flag on a distant world. The world that builds Artemis is aiming for something that lasts, a foothold, not a footprint. The tension between speed and sustainability is not just about rockets or budgets. It is about what kind of future we are willing to build and how patient we are prepared to be. Today, the moon is no longer a finish line. It is a proving ground for how we advance, endure, and share risk in the name of progress. Artemis asks if we can build something lasting, not just spectacular. Apollo was the moment humanity reached the moon. Artemis is the test of whether we can return and this time not leave again.